guys, to the Ludus Progression podcast. We're starting off strong. We've just hit our first year mark in the business. We're a fitness and education company. We're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves today on our podcast, just to give you a little bit behind the scenes on what we got going on. We've had a busy year this 2023. Started a couple years ago. We were in a garage gym lifting, just us and the boys. All right, I'm Trevor. This is Coach Rod. I'm going to tell you a little bit about ourselves and how we came to be, what we are doing currently, where we're going in the future, and how it applies to you. So a little bit of backstory about us. Me and Coach Rod were in the Army together. We ended up going on our first deployment, or for you Army guys, rotation, because we don't want to call that a deployment.
Wasn't a real deployment.
Wasn't a real deployment.
I'm going to stop it all right there.
We're going to call that out right now. Yeah. So everybody else in the comments.
Everyone shut up.
Yeah. All right. So, Rod, so how about you tell us a little bit about, your experience in Romania and kind of what was going on when you were thinking about, just trying to hit your lifts, trying to stay fit, doing all of these things. What were you trying to, or what were you doing in Romania, and how does it come a couple years later to this?
Yeah, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by just saying that if you guys want to find a way to work out, and like your excuse is that like you don't have the right barbell, or like you don't have the right dumbbells, or if you have any excuse that's relating to like the equipment that you have, there's a few that are good, but most of them aren't very good. You can find a way to get a workout in and to get stronger with very minimal equipment. And I'm going to go into that story right now, but I wanted to preface this whole thing by saying that because I'm going to hear it from all of you about, well, I can only work out at like Planet Fitness or like whatever, which I agree, that kind of sucks. But I promise you that you can get done what you need to get done in Planet Fitness or any place like that. So the story goes, what was it? 2019. What was it? It was 2019. So we went out in 2019. It was a normal rotation. As you guys know, very shortly after 2019 came 2020, which is the whole COVID thing. And for anybody that was overseas at the time, any military that are watching, I'm sure you guys experienced the same thing where all of the sudden you were just locked down. And if you were on a deployment or if you were on a rotation, it was like you were locked down twice because you already were in a shitty place. And then they went ahead and like added some of those restrictions on top of you. So for us, when we were in Romania, we had, I think there was 2 gyms on the tiny little installation. One of them was more of a CrossFit gym, and one of them was more of just like your standard. It looked like a YMCA. It had a basketball court, and then it had like a free weight section, like way too many cardio machines. And it had, I think it was all like old hammer strength. Like it was like some hammer strength. It wasn't a bad gym. I'm not complaining about it at all, actually. It worked very well for what we needed it to be. And there weren't so many people on the installation that you couldn't get a workout in. So we were in there, me and my soldiers, we were in there every day because there wasn't shit else to do, man. Like when anyone that's been in the military knows, on a deployment is when everybody decides they want to go to the gym and get in shape. When they come home, it changes. But overseas, everyone wants to work out. So everyone was working out, and I was okay. I was capitalizing on that, right? So every one of my soldiers was basically required to be in the gym. I would have rather them been in there than running, to be honest with you. And when COVID happened, that gym got taken away. So now you've got 1,000 soldiers that are locked down like in this tiny little, installation with no gym, no alcohol. There's all the shopettes and everything were closed too. You couldn't get shit. So what do these soldiers like resort to doing? Well, of course they're fucking each other up in the barracks and fighting because they've got zero outlet to get anything done. Fortunately, I was really good with for military personnel, I was really good friends with our S4. For anybody that's not in the military, it's basically a logistics position and somebody who can kind of handle acquiring, I would say, like materials and otherwise on the installation that you're in. He was able to acquire basically a Connex full of old retired gym equipment, stuff that they were going to send to auction, and they still haven't. So what we were able to do is we took all of that gym equipment that was in a Connex and we moved it into the middle of this grass, like dirty Romanian field. Fortunately, we had a team of engineers that were also attached to us at the time, and the engineers thought it'd be awesome to build basically like a small tent city around this weight facility, if you want to call it a facility. And it was basically just 2 GP medium tents, which are just 2 large, I don't know, maybe 300 square foot tents, or maybe less, probably less than that. It wasn't very big. And they were shitty tents. I mean, they had holes in them. Like a little bit of wind was just knocking them over. Like it wasn't great, but you know what? It was 100% worth setting up, because all of a sudden it weeded out all the people that were just in the gym just to do something versus all the people that still really wanted to train. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the equipment they brought in was worse than anything that most of you have probably ever worked out with. I mean, the bars were cracked from rust. The dumbbells were all beat up. I mean, there was only a handful of plates. I mean, you could still get a good workout in, but you were going to have to, if you were trying to do something heavy, you were going to have to steal plates from somebody else that was using them and throw them on your bar real quick and then give them back.
And Rod, so I think you were telling me at one point that you guys were getting a little bit creative with what you were doing out there.
Yeah, to be honest with you, the engineers were so creative with it at one point that I think they just found it was like a random, I don't know if it definitely wasn't a broomstick, but it was maybe it's just like a random pipe that they found or something like that. The engineers decided to cast their own plates out of cement. I have no idea how they did it still, because I don't know where they found the molding to make these things, but they were very proud of it. And I was proud to break them on like the first time that I lifted them and slammed them on the ground. So that was pretty fun, but they were cool guys and they were very creative. But we also had to be very creative too, because, with the lack of equipment and there was really no machines or anything like that. Very few bars and very few weights. You had to be really creative with bands and sled drags and doing different things. And then you realize that pretty much anything you can do on a machine, you can do with a band or with a sled. Including triceps, including push presses, including obviously dragging, walking. Like you can do a lot of things with the sled that people don't think about that, but you really can. So it forced us to be very creative, and it forced us to really stick to the basics, to be honest with you. So I had soldiers that, they might have been high school athletes or something. So of course, like some coach taught them how to squat in 2012 or something. But beyond that, they were never really instructed by anybody. And some of them were pretty strong still, even for never doing it, which was kind of impressive. But I was never strong until I had to be. And these guys, they could walk in and do some stuff, and I was like, okay, well, hey, if you stick with me, then we'll get you very strong, and then maybe we can, when we get back home to America, maybe you'll keep that up, and then you'll just turn that into a passion like the rest of us have. It doesn't always work, but anyway, I'll reel myself back to this Romanian story. So here we were in 2 GP medium tents with rusted weights, and a whole bunch of pent-up soldiers that were mad they couldn't leave the installation, and they were tired of seeing each other, and it was dirty and it was gross, and people were fighting. I mean, every day you showed up there was some kind of drama or some kind of beef or something. So it kind of weeded people out, that if they weren't serious about it, then they weren't there. Mm-hmm. And if they were serious about it, or if they had somebody that was forcing them to go, like I kind of was, nice. Then they were going to show up. And hell, they were going to get a good workout. And it was going to be dirty and it was going to be dangerous. And they might get in a fight. And that just is like that was just what happened. And they would show up. So for anybody that's familiar with the show Spartacus, I think it was like a Stars show in like the early, maybe mid 2000s, late 2000s. They had a gladiatorial training arena that they called the Ludus, which is also historically accurate. The Ludus was, I think, by definition, a schoolhouse, and the gladiators coined that as saying this is the schoolhouse for gladiatorial training. That was basically what it was. But in the show, they talked about it all the time. My soldiers were watching the show at the time, and all of us together kind of coined that little nasty, dirty gym that everyone was fighting in, the Ludus, because it kind of seemed like that. It was, like I said, it was dirty. It was gross. People were angry. People were fighting for no apparent reason. So if you showed up there, like honest to God, it was like you were going to like it was like a gladiator camp. That's what we considered it. It wasn't anything close to that, but that's what we considered it. Flash forward, maybe I guess it was maybe 6 months from then. We come back to America. Meanwhile, all the gyms here are closed too. Like we come back home and we didn't realize that everything was closed. So a lot of us had no place to work out because it was so sanctioned, and you couldn't even get to like Crunch Fitness or anything like that. So instead, during that time when I was in Romania, I was ordering all kinds of different gym equipment back to my house because I said, you know what, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be a product of the government telling me I can't work out. I'm going to make my own. I'm going to carve my own path. I spent like $15,000 on equipment and all different kinds. I mean, I had specialty bars and machines and racks, and I built my platforms with little band pegs. I mean, I had it all, and I threw it all in my garage. It was like an 18 by 24-foot garage, and I fit all that shit in there, including a belt squat. I mean, I had everything you could possibly need from a powerlifting standpoint. Now, you bodybuilders might have gotten kind of pissed off, and today I'd have been kind of pissed off too. But back then, I was okay with it. I was 24 years old, and maybe 23. I think I don't know how old I was. I didn't care, and that's like I had what I needed, and there was people that worked out with me in Romania that came back to Texas with us, and had decided, okay, well, you know what, I lifted so much when I was in Romania, I don't want to stop that progress, and I'm going to continue to work out. And I invited them to my garage gym that we had set up, and I said, hey, if you guys want to keep that energy, then you can come here. If you don't, then bye. Like, I didn't care. So next thing you know, we had a crew of what? Like at the peak, it was like probably 12 to 15 kids that were rotating through there. And some of those,
a good amount of us.
Yeah, some of the soldiers were real young and they just wanted to learn. And next thing you know, people were hitting us up and saying, hey, I want to come work out with you guys. We met some really awesome guys that just cold DM'd us on Instagram and were like, hey, like, I just want to come in and like hit a workout with you guys. And they stayed, and we're best friends now, things like that. So Trevor was in Poland when I was in Romania, so he didn't get the chance to be at the Ludus as it was. But when we came home to America, he was immediately, he was the first guy in there. He was working out, and he was there every single day. Even if we got home, there was days when we got home from work at 7:30 p.m. And guess what was happening still? Like, man, we didn't give a shit. Like, you're going to lift, and you're going to drink some caffeine, and you're just going to lift. And if you go to bed at fucking 12 midnight because you're cracked out, then you just go to bed at 12 midnight, but at least you did your good mornings.
Yep.
It was stupid. Like, now that we look back at it, I'm like, man, we probably should have slept. And that's probably why I look like I'm 80 years old now.
Yeah. Some of the days were pretty hot.
The
Texas heat.
It's the cortisol, man.
Yep.
So, but hey, you know what though? As a backstory, right? To make the long story short, we created a gym out of basically what was nothing. It was dirty. It was gross. It was dangerous. We coined it the Ludus. We applied that exact same model to a garage gym, which has now become what we would consider a fully functioning business. Minus the fact that, we are still looking for our first location to set up our next Ludus. And it's based on a lot of different things. So if anyone has a suggestion on what city you think we should come to, we've got a few in mind already, and we've got a lot of things in the works, but hey, you could give us a really good suggestion. We might slow everything down. But right now we're based online. You can read that story. I think I probably put that story on there.
Yeah.
Did I put it up there?
I think it's on there. If it's not on there,
we'll about us or something. If it's not, then just listen to this. And if you didn't hear it, then it's too bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that was the story, like the long story about being in Romania, and having the COVID Ludus gym and then turning it into a reality. That's where we're at today now.
Badass.
That's what this is.
So yeah, so we ended up, hitting lifts in the Ludus, and then in the Ludus garage gym. So we elevated from nothing to now we have a garage gym full of pretty tasty equipment. We got the reverse hyper, we got everything in there.
Got 2 of those.
And so then our story kind of paused there, right? So with the military, they require a lot of moves and stuff. So I was on my way out. I ended up going to my next duty station, and still keeping the lifting going, but it's never the same. You lifting with the boys is just something that it's a very special thing. If you've done it, you know what it is. Yeah. If you haven't done it, you should figure out how to do that as soon as you can.
Well, hey, that's the thing too, is that I can't tell you how many times on Instagram, like, people reached out to us and just said, hey, like, you guys are lucky that you have such a dedicated group of people. And make no mistake, we weren't setting world records. We had some strong guys, but we weren't there, at the top of the national leaderboard or anything like that. But we did have a group of very dedicated collective athletes that really did a good job of pushing each other and making some shit happen. And it's something that I definitely think, and I know that most coaches would agree that having a group of dedicated people around you to lift with you is extremely important. It's not impossible to do it on your own. There's plenty of athletes that have, but you are absolutely going to be a sum of the people that you train with. Like it's going to be, if you train with people that suck and that are shit and that have bad attitudes and that only show up 3 times a week, I'm going to assume you're going to do the same thing. You better offer training alone than training with somebody like that. But if you have a guy that's dragging you out of bed when you're hungover on a Saturday morning, and getting your ass to the gym because you made the decision to go out on a Friday night and you knew you were going to the gym and you were going to sleep it off. Those are the kind of guys, man, that are going to actually push you to make something of yourself, no matter what. Even if you don't have the genetics to be a world-class powerlifter, you will peak. You will reach the peak of your own physical. I guess what's the word?
Fitness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll top out. Like you will get to the point where, you've made all the progress that you could possibly make, and that's all we can ever ask from ourselves.
Yeah, I can't even tell you how many times Rod was banging on my doors, opening them up, shoving Snickers bars down my throat just to get into the gym.
Listen, I was always the guy, and maybe one of you guys will identify with me. I was been the guy in the friend group that 100% is the one that rallies the boys, at least for specifically training. I didn't care what happened to you the night before, or the morning before, or whatever it was. I didn't care, because I was there. I promise you, I was going to be. I did not care what happened to me, and I expected them to think the same way I did, which is stupid, and I know people don't. But I was going to hold that expectation either way, and I was going to make you feel really bad if you weren't the one that was there. If you were the only one missing, you were going to hear about it, and I was going to drag you out of bed if I had to. That was just how I was.
Oh yeah. Well, how about you tell us a little bit about your coaching background? How about you tell us, what's your experience, what's your education, in the lifting community? Because,
Sure.
One thing that we all know, if you are familiar at all with the lifting community, lifting has such a steep educational incline.
But it also doesn't. It's weird. It's both.
That when you're a very raw beginner, it is so overwhelming. People are telling you to take different supplements, hit this lift this way. You don't even know what the lift's supposed to feel like, right? There's all these different machines, all these different equipment, right? And that is one of the things that we're looking to help the world with the Ludus, is learning and lowering that educational arc or curve, so that it's not so steep, so that we can get as many people to achieve their peak physical fitness. No matter what goals you have, we want to help you achieve your peak physical fitness in the ways that you see fit. We just want to be there to help you learn, help guide you,
help structure it,
help steer you away from the misinformation that's out there, because there's a lot of misinformation in the fitness community. So we want to take our experience. We're not saying we're experts. We're not saying we're pros, but we want to take our experience and help you, no matter where you are in your lifting journey. We want to find a way to help you. So, Rod, how about you tell us a little bit about your coaching experience, about your fitness experience, and how you really learned what you know today. All right, and we're back. So we just left off talking about Rod and his coaching and fitness education experience. Coach Rod, how about you tell us a little bit about how you came to be at the level that you are now, to be a trainer? What makes you qualified to train clients? What makes you qualified to speak on these topics that we are building our company around?
For sure. So I've never claimed to be like the world's strongest man or anything like that. Actually, I have a completely alternate view on this, and I'll start from the beginning. So when I was in high school, I was 120 pounds when I was like a junior in high school, 135 when I was 18. I was a state champion track runner. That was my thing. Both my parents were Big Ten champion runners, and my sport was track and field. And to make it worse, my events were distance. I was a 2 mile. I was a mile. I was an 800, and sometimes I'd run a 400. And I mean, I was a 420 miler. So I wasn't just doing it for fun. Like, I was very competitive and I was very serious. And my existence in high school was waking up before school. It was maybe 4 a.m. And going on an 8 to 10 mile run before school started. And people thought I was in high school doing that. People thought I was stupid. But I was very serious about winning a state championship, and I eventually did. So it ended up being worth it. But then I graduated at 18 and I'm 135 pounds and I enter the real world and I'm a little guy and I'm 6 foot tall. So immediately I started saying, hey, I'm going to take that same attitude that I had as a distance runner and I'm just going to apply it because it's still training. I'm going to apply it to weightlifting instead. So by the time I was, I guess, out of college, I had went from 135 to probably just under 200 pounds, maybe a little bit over 200 pounds. And that was basically not knowing what I was doing. I was just in the gym and I was doing, what I thought was the guy on YouTube was telling me to do. I was just watching those YouTube videos or whatever, like every other kid's probably doing right now.
Yep.
There was a lot less information, I would say, when I was doing it. And probably that was a good thing because now, like we talked about earlier, there's so much, I guess I wouldn't say misinformation, but there's just there's an information overload and everyone has this training style and everyone has something that they think you should be doing. And I have an opinion on the coaches that I think everybody should listen to. And at the end of the day, very few coaches don't have a coach themselves. Like and honestly, if you are the coach that says, oh, well, I don't listen to anybody, I just make stuff up on my own because I'm very educated, I would disagree. And I would probably say that either you're not telling the truth or you're not a good coach because every coach that I know, they would tell you that they don't think they know a lot. They would tell you that they're learning something new every day. They would tell you, and if they're not learning from somebody else, then I don't really know.
Absolutely.
It doesn't really make sense.
You really never stop learning.
No.
You can never. There's so much information. There's so many things. I learned some new things when we hit our lift today, at the gym.
For sure. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that, I'll tell you, I think it starts out by, nothing. And then you cycle around to I know everything, right? That's like the ego comes out. Oh, I know everything. I don't need to learn anything else anymore. That's really when you know the least, if you ask me. You should come full circle back to I know nothing. 10 years later, 10 years of lifting experience. And most of the people that are making comments on your YouTube videos are maybe they've been lifting for 2 years and they've got it figured out, man. So listen to them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's usually not the case.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's not the case, but I can't say it's never the case because somebody could dedicate themselves very religiously for 2 years to learning about the human body and to learning about, what makes a good exercise routine. And they could, like, that is very much, it is a possibility. Does it happen very often? No. And do I think the kid commented on a YouTube video that I made is that guy? Probably not. But I'll say that they exist to make everybody happy. But the biggest thing that I would say, and then I'll get back into, kind of how I started and the education that I have, is when you are looking for somebody to listen to in terms of in the fitness community. And the first two guys that I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to tell the camera, you should look at Matt Wenning and you should look at Stan Efferding. If you listen to those two guys, you're going to be strong and you're going to look great and you're going to be super healthy. They're going to fix your diet and they're going to fix your strength training program. If you listen to those two guys, you won't go wrong. If you are out there and you're confused on who to listen to, don't listen to me. Listen to those two guys because that's who I listen to. I'm more of an echo. I take their information, guys like that, and I echo it to you guys, and I try to make it easier because sometimes it does get confusing.
I think one thing that you just brought up, a very important piece in all of this is healthy, right? Because a lot of the people in the fitness community, bodybuilders, powerlifters, strongmen, no matter who you are, we've all experienced injuries, and if you haven't, just wait. So a big piece is that pre-training. How do you get around those injuries? How do you prevent those injuries? But not only that, you also have to take into account your sleep, your nutrition. I would say those two things, even before you get to the gym, are some of the most important things that you need to be taking care of.
Yep.
So just something to call out. I liked how you hit on that is staying healthy, right? Because if you're not healthy, if the end goal is to be your optimal self, how can you do that if you're not achieving your full health?
You can't. So that's something, if you look him up, that's what Matt Wenning will tell you, is that strength isn't really measured in the amount of weight that you're pushing. It's measured in the amount of time you can train. So if I train very minimally, right, and I'm not very good at it, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I don't injure myself and I do it for 15 years, I'm going to end up being stronger than the guy. Even if he's deadlifting 1,000 pounds right now, I'm going to be stronger than him because if you train and you're unhealthy and you can deadlift 1,000 pounds, well, next year you're going to deadlift 0 pounds, right? Because you're doing everything wrong and you're destroying your body. Not saying deadlifting is bad for your body, because it inherently is not. The human body is meant to bend over and pick things up. You should be able to deadlift. If you can't, then you have a problem. But if you're doing everything wrong and you're neglecting every other category, but you're in the gym and you're lifting, eventually you will not be lifting. And that guy that is at Planet Fitness right now that you made fun of is now stronger than you. He is.
Absolutely.
Or she is.
Yep.
And that's why it's measured in time. It's the amount of time you can train.
Yeah. And the biggest one, I would argue, or I would not even argue, I would say one of the biggest things is, like you could deadlift, but if you don't train your low back, if you don't train those muscles correctly, when you're 40 or 50 years old, how are you going to be picking up your kids?
You can't.
Right? That's a huge thing, right? When you get into those, when you start going through life and getting up into your older age, you still want to be able to have a functional body.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about is being able to do the things as long as you can. Right. And the goal is to never stop. So if something breaks, you're automatically forced into a stopping pattern.
Right.
And then you have to rebuild from there and hope that you can get back to your fitness level that you were at,
right,
when you did break.
Sure. Yep. And that's exactly right. And you said it the best. And I'm shouting out those two coaches because, man, they have shown me worlds of information beyond even, the certificates that I've gotten, which, to be honest with you guys, they, at the end of the day, those are placeholders. And they help you get jobs at gyms. A lot of them, like, I went through like 7 to 8 different courses at ISSA, and I understand their business model. They want to make it easier to streamline to become a personal trainer or whatever. But unless you really, really try, you're really not going to retain. Like, it's not going to teach you like a lot of what you need to know to train a client, right? It's going to teach you the science behind it. And short, that's so important. It really is. But it's not like you're going to be in a classroom dedicated with an instructor showing you different body types and things. It just, I'm sorry guys, but it's not. There are some that are better than others, and I would say like I would say that NASM is better than ISSA in terms of the education requirement, because of the testing criteria is harder. And there are several other certifications that are a lot harder to pass. And because of that difficulty, it weeds a lot of people out that aren't that serious. They might be more dedicated to learn more about the human body. But I'm going to tell you guys too that there's some of the best coaches that I know, they never went through that credentialing process. And I'd venture to say that Louis Simmons probably never went to college to learn about, any kind. He had a very college level understanding of physics, but I don't think he went to college to study physics. I don't think he went to college at all. And I also don't think he was on ISSA.com going through a test for them to tell him that he knows how to train people.
It's one thing to memorize the information and actually learn the information, but it's one thing, if your end goal is to be a coach, realistically, you need to be able to train to your client's needs. You need to be able to help your client get to where they need to be. If they need a rehabilitation, you need to be able to know how to rehabilitate different areas, because you may know everything, but if you're not training that client how that client needs to be trained, because we're all different. We all have different genetics. We all have different,
prior injuries.
Yep.
Dietary restrictions. I mean, you name it.
Absolutely. So it's one thing to memorize, but it's a different thing to actually apply and apply to the person that you specifically are dealing with. I think that's very important.
It is. Into this too. I want to talk mostly about. I'll go into my credentialing, and it's not anything like crazy impressive. I've been in the gym for 10 years or so. I've been seeing what works with myself, and I'm very different than everybody else around. My genetics are completely predisposed to making me run a 4-minute mile. For anybody that understands like the level of training that usually takes, it's extremely genetic. Very few people ever end up doing that, and for you to switch from that to be like, hey, I want to be a power lifter. It's the opposite spectrum.
Absolutely.
Those are complete polar opposites.
Absolutely.
A lot of the people that love to run and that might have been powerlifters before that hate me because they're like, why would you give up being able to run forever to wanting to like lift heavy weights, like and not even be like a world champion. Like, why would you give that up? And I would ask them the same question. Guys that are genetically very, very strong. They have very fast twitch. They have a lot of fast twitch muscle. They've got motor units that can fire all at the same target at the same time. Those are things that took me a long time to figure out, and genetically I'll still probably never be at the level that some of those guys are when they wake up. So I'll ask them the same question, and we'll circle each other the whole time. But I made the decision that I didn't want to be skinny and small. I wanted to be strong and big, and I'm still working on it, like every day.
Let's go into that a little bit. What made you decide? Because running does have value. I was a cross country runner. I was a long distance runner myself, and I think we kind of both came to the same conclusion.
Yep.
What made you choose being able to run really fast versus being able to, have larger muscles and be able to do things with more strength?
Yeah, I don't like fighting. So being 240 pounds, 6 foot, 240 pounds with a beard and long hair, I don't have to fight very often. People come up to me and they don't, hey, I probably won't beat you in a fight, but for whatever reason, like, I don't have to prove that. Like, they just come up to me and they're like, yeah, it's an
automatic deterrent.
It's great. I don't have to fight at all.
Yeah.
And I implore you, if you don't like to fight, which none of you should, you should get big. Like, you should just get as big as you can.
Yeah.
Like, you should be, it is a foolproof method so far in my life, that it's worked every time.
Yeah.
Very rarely does somebody want to fight. It's great. I love it. That's why.
Awesome. Yeah. I think a big piece of that, and we can get a little real here. So is, being lethal almost, being able to, not necessarily having to have to fight, but being capable of fighting when needed. Right?
Well, and it's not the same, because I know everyone's going to get mad. Just because you lift weights doesn't make you qualified to fight. But I can tell you this. If two untrained people are about to fight, and one of them is very strong and one of them is not, I can probably tell you who's going to win. Okay, and I can also tell you from experience as somebody who's dabbled in the world of MMA and very much in jiu-jitsu, even when I was a brand new white belt, I could go into the gym, and after about a month, right, of dedicated training, of just learning the positions and just the very basics of jiu-jitsu, there was a lot, the guys that were 135 pounds, 145 pounds, I still had to be very careful, because there are a lot of compromising positions in jiu-jitsu. And if I decided to, most of the time with a guy that small, I could just stand up. If they have me in guard, I'm standing up. I could. And if I really wanted to, I could also slam them right back down. Absolutely. With 240 pounds on a 135 pound guy. And you do that on the concrete. Like, those are the things that, like, there's a lot of debate on that in like the whole YouTube world right now with like Bradley Martin and the 260 pound thing. Yeah. Everyone's talking about that.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but I'm kind of on his side in a sense. And don't freak out. Like, relax, chill out. I'm telling you that if somebody that is that size decides that, like, you are going to be better off as a pancake on the concrete, like, you're not there. The only people that could do that are very, very trained MMA fighters, which oddly enough are the people that he's talking to. So anybody that's less than like a UFC fighter, there's so many compromising positions in that world. If a 260 pound guy decided that he's going to pick you up and slam you down on the concrete, and he's not going to let go, and he's going to do it a couple times, it's not very much effort for him to do. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. And
as somebody that's done it and that have been in that world, I had to be very, very careful.
Absolutely.
To not like hurt the guys that had a fight coming up.
Absolutely.
And be like the spazzy white belt, like, but I came from powerlifting. I was strong. It was easy. So that is a thing. So everyone, if you're big, that doesn't mean you can fight, but it absolutely helps. It does. It is. And if anything else is nothing else, it's a deterrent. People don't really want to fight you if you're way bigger than them. It's natural.
And another thing about lifting and being big is, controlling your body. Being able to learn your body and know your strength and know your power so that you can control that, because one thing is to be violent, but the other thing is to be capable of protecting, right? And if you're a 220 pound guy, going up to a 135 pound guy, you could, you could slam him into the ground, but, you could also have the capability, if he's swinging at you, you can use an accurate amount of force to deter that situation from happening,
Yeah.
you're able to control that situation better.
Yes, that's a fact. Yeah, that's
And
absolutely true.
that's a big piece of a lot of situations that could arise in life is, you know, being able to control yourself, and also, you know, the situation is huge, and that I would say is a big reason on why you're not forced into a lot of fights.
Probably so. It
Yeah.
could be, and I don't know. Like every couple of weeks, it seems like it's going to happen, and then magically it doesn't.
Mhm.
It's very strange. In the parking lots in different places,
Yeah.
and people come up to me and they're like, "Well, maybe not."
Yeah.
And I love it. Hey, I'm not going to complain.
Yeah.
That's not the only reason that I got big. I just wanted to tell you.
Yeah,
guys
that's
that.
just one of the one of the benefits.
Yeah, it's one of the benefits.
Yeah.
But I would say that the real reason is just if you grow up training, you have a passion to train, and you fall in love with the process of training.
Absolutely.
And you can still learn that at any age to fall in love with that process. Unfortunately, a lot of people just don't.
Yeah.
And when you do, it's like it can be like an addiction.
Yeah.
And for anybody that doesn't believe me, the guys that are like actually serious about it, I dare you to try to go a week without going to the gym when you absolutely have the time to go.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to, because I can't do that.
I can't do that.
And
I can
call
make
it
it
what you
maybe
want.
3 days. I
Call
think.
it what you want. I don't, you can call it what you want, but you know, but that's something that I'm very much okay with.
Yeah.
And I'll do that
Yeah.
probably forever.
Because you look good too while you're doing it.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the nice byproduct of it. If you're going to be addicted to something, make it that.
Yeah.
Make it training. Like
Absolutely.
fall in love with the training, and then everything else that comes from the training is just going to fall into place.
Mhm.
But the best part, like, you don't have to love the result as like more than you love the training. If you love the training more than the result, you'll get the result.
Yep. Enjoying the process.
And that's the thing I'll tell a lot of clients is if you fall in love with the idea of what you're going to be, that is effective, but it's not as effective as falling in love with the training to get there. And that I will stand by. So reeling it all the way back, the first credentials that I ever got out of any of my certifications was the Westside Barbell personal trainer certification. This was when Louis was alive. And he there was a whole bunch of assigned reading. I think Super Training was on there. I think the Book of Methods was obviously on there. There's the squat manual, the squat deadlift manual, the bench press manual. There was a handful of other books on there. They were all required readings to pass this test. I don't remember how many questions were on that one. That one was pretty easy. Right after that, a couple months after that, I got the special strength certification from Westside, which was significantly harder. I want to say it was. Maybe it was 70. I don't know if it was 75 or if it was like 200. It was a lot of questions, and they were all short answer. There was no multiple choice. It was short answer, and it was going to be graded by somebody at Westside. And there was like 15 assigned readings. One of them was a book about physics. It was a physics book, like an actual college physics book. And there was like 6 or 7 different videotapes of Louis going over some stuff like back in like the 90s or early 2000s. Awesome vintage stuff. I still got it all on my bookshelf. It's pretty cool. I'll keep that forever. And I learned a lot from reading all of his manuals that he had written, plus all of the manuals that were written before him that he drew his information. We're talking about like Russian doctrine that was translated. Like he went very deep to find some of these books and some of these manuals to give to us, or he put it on his website. And if you buy the certification, it comes with all the assigned readings. So my library is full of just like Russian lifting books and freaking like stuff Louis wrote and like whatever. And I implore you guys to go on the westsidebarbell.com and find some of those books, man, because once you start reading those books, it's almost like you gain 10 pounds. Like you will learn some stuff in there that completely contradicts like everything that YouTube's telling you today, and like all these influencers are going to tell you things that the guys over at Westside Barbell would be like, that's not the case. And I'll tell you right now, with the amount of world records that were set under that roof, you should absolutely listen to what they were saying.
Absolutely.
And by the way, the guy I shouted out earlier, Matt Wenning, was one of their world record holders for a long time, and I believe he still is. I think he's still a world record holder. He's an awesome guy. You guys should go check him out. And that's going to lead me kind of into my next point, is that it's kind of on the same basis, and I'm going to talk about these influencers again, man, because a lot of these guys, they want to say, well, I'm training like so-and-so, and I'm going to do this exact split. Name any of these guys. Name Arnold. Name Mike Mentzer's the guy. Mike Mentzer's the guy everyone is talking about right now. And if anyone knows anything about Mike Mentzer, supposedly he was training 3 days a week, and he was training at max intensity on those 3 days, but that's all he was doing. And for anybody that's in the audience that thinks that they have the genetic capability to work out for just 3 days a week and be a Mr. Olympia runner-up, or at least a contestant in Mr. Olympia, I think you're probably crazy, because Mike Menser was a genetic anomaly, right? And you guys can't train like you're genetic anomalies. You have to pick a coach that had the same beginnings as you, very similar genetics as you, because it's much less. If you gave Mike Menser any workout plan, he would have been bigger than both of us. No matter what he did, it doesn't matter. He could have thrown anything at the wall, and that guy would have been bigger than us, because genetically that guy was a freak. He just was, and that is absolutely a factor.
Yeah.
So for any of the kids that are out there that are like, well, it seems easy to just train maximally 3 times a week, I'm going to implore you you can try it, and maybe it'll work for you. Maybe you're part of that genetic group that can handle 3 days a week, and that's all you need. But there's some people like a guy like me or a guy like you who's so used to these long distance runs and all this like crazy training. Like, we need a little bit of extra volume in order for our stubborn muscles to grow. And it took a long time. I mean, if you tell somebody you've been in the gym for 10 years, you'd assume they'd do bigger than me. Like, I should be bigger than I am. And a lot of that's just my poor excuse of genetics, but I believe that there is a part in me that is very hard for me to gain specific muscle in specific places. And a lot of that comes down to genetics, and it will with these kids too. And a lot of these kids want to train like Arnold and train like this, and it's a great starting place. But you can't always expect the results, when you train like somebody like that who just has these superior genetics. They are who they were for a very good reason. And Arnold would train twice a day for hours and hours, and a lot of kids can't handle that either. I can't handle that. The amount of drugs you take can be, I mean, you can play with it a little bit, but man, like, that's a lot of volume, and that's a lot of time. And I'll tell you, Matt Wenning will tell you that you shouldn't train that much. And that's a hard pill for all of us to swallow. He'd probably look at me and say, I'm training too much. And that's a hard pill for me to swallow, and probably one I'm not willing to swallow. And that's me being egotistical. But that's the message that I give everybody, is pay attention to the people's workout plans that you're given, the athletes specifically. And if they have a similar background to you, right? If they looked very similar to you when you were in high school, and then all of a sudden they grew up massive, and try it out. Maybe it'll work for you. But I implore you to take all of their information with a grain of salt, because a lot of those guys, given any workout plan, would have been massive, right? Try to look for the guys that had very weak or poor genetics that scientifically willed their way to be like, hey, this is exactly what will work, right? And it worked for me. Like, whoever it is, they're saying this worked for me, and I think it'll work for you too, because I have terrible genetics and I was able to get here, right? Those are the guys that I think that people should listen to more. And I don't know how to find them, but I'm going to tell you that if that's a criteria you can figure out how to use, that's what you should do.
And I think that's a good point. We've talked about coaching. We've talked about, what it is, to be going through that process of education. But the thing is really just don't stop. It doesn't stop. You need, and if you're going to be trained by someone, or if you're going to go at it alone, the important piece is to do your due diligence, to make sure that you are constantly learning these different ways, different methods, different things, because no one way is right. Each person is different. But if you find something that works for you, great. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the final answer. There could be ways that you're still missing. Your education should never stop.
It never stops, man.
So I think that's a very important piece to call out.
And the last thing I'll say about that is, Stan will tell you that the plan that works is the plan that you stick with. And that's the same for diets too. The diet that works is the diet you stick with. If you stick with it, if you throw shit at a wall, something's going to stick. That's basically the message, right? So the plan that you will stick to is the plan that's going to work. Regardless.
Because how many times do people go on a diet for 2 weeks at a time, and then they're back eating
they give up
ho-hos and tasty
ding dongs and whatever else. I mean, I eat those all the time. So I can't
Sometimes
really say anything
it's justifiable
about that.
if you work it into your diet.
We'll say that. But man, so and then what I'm going to jump into next is we talked about all this training. We talked about some of that. I didn't expect to talk about some of the stuff we talked about.
We ended up going a lot long. This was only supposed to be a 15-minute talk.
That was a tangent. I got on my high horse about the influencers, and some of them are great, and I genuinely love some of them, but there's also some of them that I fear are giving people a little bit of bad information, not misinformation, just not good. But what I kind of want to change topics into is, after all that training, after I got my, education or whatever it was, and, we started training guys in the gym. We brought, a couple of our guys to a few different meets, and, I think for a while we were pretty consistent with putting about 150 to 200 pounds on people's totals that would come into the gym. And those aren't new guys. These are guys that were powerlifters in college.
Yeah.
Right. And it was nothing that I created. It was completely echoed from all of the masters that were before me. Through all of the different books that were read. I didn't do anything new. It was completely based on what has worked in the past.
Yeah.
And it was no bullshit.
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy either. It was part of it.
Yeah.
But after all that, things started to kind of wind down. I got called to the Afghanistan withdrawal. So I had to pack up that gym in 10 days, and he was there.
Yep.
He was there.
Man, that sucked.
He was the guy that was right next to me, man. In 10 days.
I had a truck.
Yeah. Yeah. In 10 days, we packed up that fucking house and that gym, and we went overseas. And when I came back, he had already moved to Georgia.
Yeah.
At the time, so we were separated for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
We weren't hanging out with each other anymore. And that was when it kind of dawned on us that, like, hey man, just because, we're not like in the Ludus anymore, we don't have our gym. We were pretty small minded at the time.
Yeah.
In a sense. I'll say that in a sense.
Yeah.
Because we had the gym, we had what we wanted, right? We were like, hey, we're good here.
Yep.
Like we've got the crew, we've got the brand.
Yep.
We're just going to leave it there. But I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting on the couch, with my girlfriend, and, I had just gotten back from the gym. It was dark, and I was contemplating on what I was about to throw on the stove. And I got a phone call from him, and he threw this idea out there, and immediately we both, like, it was like the cartoon with the light bulb, like both of us hit that like at the same time in different states. It was like, man, like we figured out what we're about to do.
Yeah.
We figured out like what's going to be next. Like the shit didn't stop just because we were in different places, and the gym was in a storage unit at this point. That doesn't mean that like the Ludus as it was going to just end.